I'm looking for one outdoor company who wants to work with us to help crush their organic content. Let me explain what I mean. I have a lot of theories after running this show for the last 6 years. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of concepts, a lot of things that haven't actually been proven. And I'm working on a theory currently, and I'm looking for a brand who wants to help test this theory in real time in a very public way. Here's the backstory. We talk a lot about on this podcast about the sea of sameness, right? How every brand is the same, how most of the products are the same, and how all the content that every brand produces is basically the same. And a lot of this lack of differentiation gets blamed on the brand, when rightfully so, because the brand is the foundation for everything. And a lack of differentiation at the brand level permeates through everything else. But there's one piece of the equation that doesn't often get as much flack as I think it should, and that is the content that the brands are producing. Now, I think we have to acknowledge that while, yes, a brand is differentiated at the brand level, at the foundational level, it means nothing if that brand can't translate that differentiation into content that's relevant for their audience. My theory is that while, yes, there are a lot of brands that struggle to differentiate themselves, they actually probably have a differentiator inside their founder story or buried underneath their brand that's actually meaningful. Consider this, for example. Let's say we have two brands, brand A and brand B. Both of these brands have an identical product story, an identical founder story, an identical mission, vision, values. They're basically the same on paper. However, brand A is able to translate that brand into content that's relevant and interesting and engaging and actually builds an audience through their content. Whereas brand B, while they have the exact same brand as brand A, they're actually unable to translate who they are into content that's relevant. Now, I think what's interesting is to realize that while both of these brands are the same, brand A is obviously the brand that's going to win down the road because they have figured out to create content that earns attention. So, in this argument and this debate about brand differentiation, I don't want to make it sound like brand is less important than it is. But being able to translate who you are as a company into content that's relevant and is differentiated, that's the real ticket. So, my theory is that brands actually, if you dig deep enough, they have something in them that is different, that's sticky, that's unique. The challenge is one, identifying that, but then two, translating that into content that's actually interesting and engaging and relevant. And so that's the theory that I want to test, and I want to do it very publicly. This is new work for us, and we don't have the case studies to demonstrate our ability to do this in the real world. And that's where you come in. I'm looking for one brand who is interested in transforming the organic content but documenting it with me on the podcast live. I want to treat this like a public experiment that we can document and we can bring others into this journey as we attempt to figure out how do we create organic content at scale that builds an audience and that ultimately drives revenue. Within this experiment, I have a number of other questions that I would love to try and answer. Can we decrease paid media expenses while increasing organic content's effectiveness? What is the value of building an audience? What is the value of designing relevance in content? What is the value of actually producing something that your audience wants to watch and that they actually care about? Can we show a meaningful connection between content and revenue? How can we connect content to in-person community building efforts? And can we help differentiate a brand by refining its point of view and then translating that into content? If you're a small brand and this sounds interesting, I would love to hear from you. Again, I'm looking for someone who wants to try new things, someone who wants to spend less on paid media, someone who sees the value in audience building, someone who inherently believes that their audience doesn't care and that it's our job as marketers and creatives to design content that makes them care. We're offering this service at a severely discounted price because we're still new at this. This is something we want to try and we want to grow in, but we also recognize that without case studies and proof, no one will take us seriously, which is why we want to document the journey. So for the brand that's interested, not only will you receive amazing content and an amazing content strategy plan, but you'll also be able to build in public and gain a lot of visibility through this public experiment. So if you're interested, go ahead and reach out. My email is cole@portsidepro.com. You can find us at portsidepro.com. Reach out. We're currently evaluating fit to find the right partner that wants to make this public experiment happen.